All right, guys, let's get right into it. I'm not gonna waste no time. Apparently, you guys already seen inside of the caption. Quick little story time. So the day before yesterday, what's the day before yesterday? The other day, I was shooting a gig, which I can't really show any footage of because I was shooting for another production company. We were shooting a radio podcast. I was getting like B-roll content and also shooting the podcast. And I was using my Sony A7 IV alongside one of my other friends, which is part of the production company. And we were using various cameras. So we had 3 different camera angles and the A7 IV just happened to be one. And while shooting the podcast, literally right when it was just about to end, I started to see this little orange light light up on my Sony A7 IV, which was indicating that it was starting to overheat. And I was confused because one, you guys can see my Sony A7 IV review. This is the camera that I absolutely love. I made a couple of videos about it already. I feel like out of all my years, I've shot with a lot of different cameras and I switched camera brands, switched to a lot of different cameras. And for some reason, this was the camera that stood the test of time. Like I usually got rid of my cameras pretty quickly just because dealing with this new age of technology, there's always constantly new things releasing, new things to get excited about. So I feel like we obviously, this generation, we jumped ship way too quick. Like we switched to different camera brands, thinking that is going to get our content to another level when a lot of times that lies within the lighting, your ability, your color grading, your composition, your storytelling. It just that you getting better in general is what's going to make your images get better. Not a camera, not specs, not 4K, 6K, 7K, 8K, 12K, whatever the K is. That's not what's going to really bring your image quality where you want it to get. Lighting will, lens choices will, all those different things. In general, I used to switch cameras a lot. And the A7 IV was the camera that stood the test of time because I'm a hybrid shooter. So I'm primarily video. Most of my work is video focused, right? I'm a filmmaker. I mainly do events, weddings, documentaries, and then I want to work on my own short form film, movies, my own creative ideas, and then also commercial work too as well. And the Sony A7 IV lasted the test of time because it was the one camera that could handle pretty much everything pretty good. It was really good at photos, really good at videos. It has a downsample 7K sensor. I made a long-term review of it, and all the things I said about the camera, I still believe. I feel like this is the best hybrid camera that I've used to date. But when the orange decal came on, to get back to the story, eventually the camera overheated and it shut off. Wasn't a big deal. I got majority of the podcast, plus we had multiple camera angles, so it's not gonna matter in the final edit. But for me, it was just like, dang, like my camera really just overheated on me in the middle of a shoot. So once it turned off, I literally gave it a few more seconds. I turned it back on just to see. And I'm gonna see if I could post like a little snippet that I recorded on my phone of it starting to overheat again. Long story short, it overheated again and then shut off. While it overheated, I was shooting 30 frames per second. We were in a studio environment, so we weren't outside. It wasn't hot. And when I was getting B-roll outside, it was also cold. Like I was freezing. So pretty sure the camera wasn't hot at that point. And it was just weird to me because it wasn't really that hot inside of the studio. But again, I was shooting at 30 frames per second. I was shooting for a decent amount of time. It wasn't too long, but a decent amount of time. I've shot longer before. And then, so after that happened, I decided to, take it for what it is. It happened once. A lot of people complain about their Sony A7 IV overheating, especially when you're shooting at the higher frame rate. You're shooting in 4K. So it's not that big of a deal. Just take it for what it is. You're bound to get got once, right? I had the camera for over 2 years, never overheated in any situation. So fast forward, I had another shoot, I believe like 2 days later. And before this shoot, I battle tested my Sony A7 IV. So I turned it on, put it at 60 frames per second and just let it record 30 minutes straight, no overheating inside of the house, nothing. Everything was good. So I'm like, all right, you know what? Maybe it was just like muggy in there or something just caused it to overheat. I'll leave it at what it is. I go and I shoot. This is a church event. It's a worship event. So obviously I'm not recording like just straight through the whole time as if it's a podcast or any kind of long form. I'm like getting highlights. So I'm getting snippets. And like right when I'm right back at like that 15-minute mark before I'm ready to pack up and leave, but I'm just getting a few more shots. I'm shooting at 60 frames per second this whole time because again, a lot of these shots are for B-roll. So the client wants to be able to slow the footage down, include it in multiple different edits. So 60 frames per second, it is what it is. That's what I'm doing. I started to see the orange icon on my screen again. Now I'm like, all right. So now I see why people complain about the Sony A7 IV overheating, because it happened to me twice within a week. So immediately I started thinking like, dang, like this, it's not really a problem, because when I saw that, what I did immediately was switch over to 24 frames per second, and I was able to shoot. I stayed even a little bit longer. I didn't experience any overheating, any problem. So at 24 frames per second, it was perfectly fine. I think when you start pushing the frame rates, you start pushing this camera, that's when you start to see problems. So although I love this camera and it's been the best camera for me, as far as like my B camera, so my A camera is the Sony FX6. My B camera, which I usually use for a lot of my gimbal work, is my Sony A7 IV. But it's looking like I might be in the market for another B camera, to be honest with y'all. My number one thing is I'm at a place now where I just look at these cameras as a tool. If I'm being real with you, I've owned a lot of cameras. So while having the A7 IV, I've owned a Sony A7S III. I've owned a Sony FX30. I've used multiple FX3s. I've owned Blackmagic. I've owned Canon, from the Canon R series to UC70s and all types of cameras. Like, I've used a lot of different cameras, and at the end of the day, all of these cameras are sharp. All these cameras offer 10-bit color science. All of these cameras have 4K. All these cameras look good. Like, I go to some of my FX30 shots and it looks really good. The reason why I love the A7 IV was because of all the things that come with this. Like, I would say if you are someone who's in the market for a hybrid camera and you're looking to get content stuff, you're looking to even, like, let's say you're more photography based than you are video. So you're not shooting like long form, like you're not shooting podcasts or like just long form stuff, and you're relying on your camera to just shoot at maybe 60, 30 frames per second for a long time. I feel like this camera is absolutely perfect. Like, I'm not knocking this camera at all. This is a camera that I still love. But for me, these cameras are just a tool, and I get paid in order to produce at a certain level and to produce the things that clients may be asking for. So for me, having a camera that's reliable in the shooting situations that I need it for is just more important. So I'm at a place where when things like this happen, I don't try to just make impulse decisions like, you know what, this happened, I can't deal with it. Like, old me this camera would have already been going before making this video, and I would have just got another camera. But I want to take the time to just think, consider my options, and I'm leaning towards getting another camera just because for me, I need something that is reliable. If I'm being paid to produce, let's say, a wedding, let's say I'm shooting a wedding, and I'm relying on this A7 IV as my second angle on the bride and the groom, and let's say they're giving a very important speech. They're renewing they're saying their vows, or the bride is walking down the aisle and the camera overheats. Like, I can't deal with that. I can't have that. I'm not shooting in an environment where I have more control. I would say if I'm shooting more product stuff, if I'm doing more photography, obviously you don't have to worry about the camera overheating. And like, if you're doing photography in some video, you don't have to worry about that. Or even if I'm doing like some commercial work where I'm able to align things out, I have time to, you know, set things up and set things out. I can see this camera working for so many people. Music videos, anything like that, where it's like, you know what, my camera's overheating a little bit, let's take a quick little break and then get back to it. But I am a shooter. I shoot a lot of different things. So there's times where I'm shooting like that where this wouldn't be a problem, but then there's other times where it's like, I need this camera to roll. So cameras that I'm considering right now, I was either thinking about getting a Sony FX3 as a B cam for my Sony FX6, but obviously that's very expensive. So I'm also leaning towards getting a Sony FX30, and the reason why I'm thinking about that is because, one, it has the fan inside of it, so I don't have to worry about any overheating. I feel like the FX30 is a perfect B cam to my FX6. The only reason why I didn't use the FX30 as a B cam before is because I do a lot of photography work, but I never checked out the spec sheet of the FX30 that much, and I just realized that it has 26 megapixels. So I might rent it, try it out, try out the photos, see if I like it. If I do, I can realistically see myself using that as a B cam slash gimbal camera and rocking that out with my FX6 and calling it a day. Or another option, I saw some people that buy like this fan module and they put on their Sony A7 IV, anything like that, and I could use that for now until the Sony A7 V come out. I'm gonna let y'all know now, if the Sony A7 V does not have a fan inside of it, I'm not buying it, because like if it overheats and stuff, I just can't do it. Another reason why I'm considering the Sony FX30 is because they're releasing Blackmagic RAW with the Blackmagic monitors, and my Sony FX6 is going to be able to get B RAW, and so will the Sony FX30. So I feel like it's the perfect B cam in my kind of situation. So I'm thinking about it, I'm contemplating it over. Obviously you guys will know what decision I go with, but just wanted to be transparent and let you guys know that, because I recently did a review where I said that the Sony A7 IV never overheated on me. At the end of the day, I seen many reviews that said, listen, it overheats. People even commented it, and I never disputed it and said that it didn't. My main thing is, if it didn't happen to me, I'm just gonna give you my perspective. So at that time, it didn't happen to me. Now that has changed, it has happened. Have my overall thoughts of this camera changed? No, to be honest, this is gonna be emotional for me. If I do end up letting this camera go, it's gonna be emotional. Even if the Sony A7 V comes out and I let this camera go to get that, it's gonna be emotional for me, because I've done so much with this camera. I love this camera. It's an amazing camera. Sony, you guys did a fantastic job. Honestly, the only thing is no overheating. You know what I'm saying? And then we good, we straight. This camera is pretty much a perfect camera in my opinion. So if you're in the market or you just bought it, don't feel like, oh, your camera's trash, it's not good now. This camera is absolutely amazing. And I've shot multiple weddings, multiple events, multiple podcasts and things like that, and haven't dealt with any of this. Now all of a sudden I'm starting to see it. So that's probably not something that I could stick around with for the long term. But I'll let you guys know what I decide, and let me know down inside the comment section if you feel like I might be moving too fast. Maybe I should rock out with it a little bit longer. What you feel like the best thing I should do is. I have no problem switching to another camera brand, but my thing is, the reason why I'm probably not gonna do it, and the reason why my mind automatically went to the FX30 is because I already have lenses I already have my E-mount lenses. I already have all those things, and I don't feel like dealing with the whole color matching thing. Like, yes, I understand how to color grade. I'm not a color expert, but I understand how to match different camera colors. Like, I've done it before. I've owned a Blackmagic and a Canon, and used that in conjunction with each other for a long time, but it just adds extra work. It's easier to color match and get everything to match up when you're using the same brand. A lot of these Sony cameras, they all kind of look a little similar, so that's a little hint for y'all. If y'all wondering, like, if you switch from a Sony A7 IV to a FX3, are you gonna see a drastic image quality difference? Like, anybody that tells you that, like, just it's whatever. But appreciate y'all. Catch y'all in the next one. I'm out.